Tae-ho Kim stared out the viewport as the transport ship approached Meridian Academy. The massive structure floated in orbit around a gas giant, its crystal towers catching the light of a distant sun. Tae-ho pressed his hand against the cold glass, watching the academy grow larger as they approached. He was the only human in the exchange program this year. 3 minutes until docking, the ship's computer announced. Please collect all personal items. Tae-ho grabbed his small bag. It contained everything he had brought from Earth, some clothes, a few books, and a small stone his grandfather had given him for luck. The weight of being Earth's representative felt heavy on his shoulders. The ship slowed as it entered the docking bay. Tae-ho felt the slight bump as the craft connected with the station. A soft hiss filled the air as the pressure equalized. His heart beat faster. This was it. When the door slid open, Tae-ho was greeted by a tall blue alien with 4 long arms. The being towered over him by at least 2 feet. You must be Kim Tae-ho from Earth, the alien said in perfect universal standard. I am Professor Du, your advisor during your stay at Meridian Academy. Tae-ho bowed slightly. Thank you for meeting me, Professor. Follow me. I will show you to your quarters. As they walked through the wide hallways, Tae-ho noticed other students moving away from him. Some whispered to each other while pointing at him with various limbs or appendages. A group of 6-legged creatures huddled together, their eye stalks all turned in his direction. Is something wrong with me? Tae-ho asked quietly. Professor Du's upper arms made a gesture that might have been embarrassment. You must understand, most students here have never seen a human before. Earth only joined the Federation 3 years ago. Many species fear Deathworlders. Deathworlders? Species from high-gravity planets with harsh conditions. Your world's environment would kill most beings in this academy. Your physical strength alone makes you concerning to some. Tae-ho looked down at his hands. They seemed normal to him, just ordinary human hands. But here, they marked him as something dangerous. They passed a large room where students floated in anti-gravity bubbles, their many limbs manipulating complex 3-dimensional models that hung in the air. That is the advanced spatial mathematics class, Professor Du explained. Perhaps next term, if you do well. Tae-ho nodded, though he wondered if he would ever fit in here. Everything was so strange, so alien. For the first time since leaving Earth, he felt truly alone. They arrived at a door that slid open at Professor Du's touch. Inside was a small room with a bed, desk, and what appeared to be a food dispensing unit. We've adjusted the gravity to Earth standard in your quarters, Professor Du said. The bed material should support your bone density. The food unit has been programmed with Earth-compatible nutrition. Thank you, Tae-ho said, setting his bag down on the bed. Your first class begins in 1 hour. Applied Quantum Physics with Professor Gi. The location is already in your student pad. Professor Du handed him a thin tablet-like device. Tae-ho took it carefully. Applied Quantum Physics? But I've only had basic physics on Earth. All 4 of Professor Du's arms made a gesture that looked like a shrug. The Academy Committee placed you based on your test results. All students here are elite minds from their worlds. Tae-ho swallowed hard. He had been at the top of his class on Earth, but this was different. He would be competing with beings who had evolved on worlds with completely different rules of nature. I should warn you, Professor Du continued, the students here are exceptional. Many have been studying these concepts since they were young. Do not be discouraged if you find it difficult to keep up. Tae-ho straightened his shoulders. I'll do my best, Professor. That is all anyone can ask. Professor Du moved toward the door. Rest now. Your journey was long. After Professor Du left, Tae-ho sat on the edge of his bed. He pulled out the small stone his grandfather had given him and turned it over in his hand. It was just a simple river rock, smooth from years in water, but it reminded him of home. I didn't come all this way to fail, he whispered to himself. He might be an outsider, a Deathworlder in a place of advanced beings, but he was determined to prove himself. Tomorrow would be his first real test. Taeho arrived at his first class 10 minutes early, but most of the alien students were already there. The classroom was circular with seats arranged in rising tiers. He found an empty spot in the back row and sat down, trying to ignore the stares. "Is this seat taken?" he asked a green-skinned student with 4 eyes. The alien moved away without answering. Taeho sighed and turned on his data tablet. The door at the bottom of the classroom opened, and a strange being floated in. Professor Gi looked like a cloud of purple smoke with thin, thread-like tendrils that extended and contracted as it moved. The professor had no visible face, just a slight thickening of the purple mist at what might be the top. "Welcome, students," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Today we begin our exploration of quantum positioning." Taeho sat up straighter. This was what he had come for, to learn things beyond Earth science. Today's assignment involves calculating the probable location of quantum particles under gravitational stress, Professor Gi announced. "This is typically a third-year problem, but I believe in challenging minds." The classroom filled with clicks, chirps, and hums as students activated their data tablets. Many of Taeho's classmates had multiple arms or appendages, allowing them to work on different parts of the problem at once. A bug-like student to his left was using 6 limbs to manipulate a 3D model while its feelers tapped rapidly on a keypad. Taeho looked down at his own tablet and frowned. The equation displayed on his screen looked familiar. Very familiar. In fact, it was almost identical to a problem he'd solved in his advanced physics class back on Earth. He read through it again, sure he must be missing something. But the more he studied it, the more certain he became. This was basically Earth's standard Schrödinger equation combined with classical gravitational principles. It was challenging, yes, but not nearly as difficult as Professor Gi had suggested. Taeho began to work, applying the methods he'd learned from his Earth teachers. The solution came together quickly. While the other students were creating complex multi-dimensional models, Taeho used a simpler approach based on the fundamental physics principles he knew. Within 20 minutes, he had completed the entire assignment. He double-checked his work, then triple-checked it. Finding no errors, he pressed the submit button. Almost immediately, Professor Gi's misty form changed color, shifting from purple to a bright orange. The class fell silent as the professor floated directly to Taeho's seat. "Student Kim," Professor Gi's voice was quieter now, directed only at him. "Did you misunderstand the assignment?" Taeho felt his face grow warm as every eye, stalk, sensor, and optical receptor in the room turned toward him. "No, Professor," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've completed it as assigned." The orange mist swirled faster. "One moment." Professor Gi's tendrils extended to Taeho's tablet, somehow interacting with it despite their misty appearance. The classroom remained completely silent. Taeho could feel sweat forming on his back. Had he made a terrible mistake? Was his Earth education so far behind that he'd completely misunderstood the problem? After what felt like hours but was probably only a minute, Professor Gi's color gradually returned to purple. "This is correct," the professor announced, surprise evident in the voice. "But your methodology is unlike anything I've seen. You've approached it from a completely different angle." Murmurs broke out across the classroom. The 6-armed student next to Taeho leaned over to look at his screen. "How did you solve it so quickly?" the alien asked. Before Taeho could answer, Professor Gi addressed the class. "Student Kim has provided us with an unexpected learning opportunity. Instead of using the Dorosian probability matrices as expected, he has applied what appears to be a more direct approach." The professor's form expanded slightly as it returned to the front of the room. "Students, I am modifying today's lesson. Please review Student Kim's solution, which I am now sharing to your tablets. For tomorrow, I want each of you to explain how this method works and why it produces correct results despite bypassing several steps we consider essential." Taeho's solution appeared on the large display at the front of the room. He sank lower in his seat, wishing he could disappear. He hadn't meant to cause trouble on his first day. After class, as Taeho gathered his things, Professor Gi approached him again. Student Kim, may I ask where you learned this method? It's standard physics where I'm from, Professor. We learned it in high school. The professor's mist swirled thoughtfully. Fascinating. It seems humans have developed a unique approach to quantum problems. I would be interested to learn more about Earth physics. As Taeho left the classroom, he noticed the other students looking at him differently. The fear was still there, but now mixed with curiosity and perhaps a touch of respect. Perhaps being a Deathworlder wasn't entirely a disadvantage after all. Taeho walked into the classroom the next day and immediately felt the difference. Yesterday, students had avoided him. Today, they stared openly. When he sat down, the empty seats beside him quickly filled. How did you solve the problem so quickly? Asked a student with multiple eyes arranged in a circle around what might be a head. The being was thin and tall, clearly evolved for a low-gravity environment. I'm Han, the student added. From Poloria. Nice to meet you, Taeho said, surprised by the sudden interest. I just used the standard approach we learn on Earth. Han's eyes blinked in sequence. But you finished in 20 minutes. The rest of us needed hours, and some didn't finish at all. Taeho shrugged. When you grow up in high gravity, you develop an understanding of how forces work. It becomes natural. A blue-skinned student with flowing, see-through tendrils leaned across the table. But you didn't use the Lomar equations at all. Those are the foundation of quantum positioning. I'm Ju, the blue student added. Earth physics approaches problems differently, Taeho explained. We don't use those equations. We have our own methods. Professor Gi floated into the classroom, ending their conversation. Today's lesson focused entirely on Taeho's solution from yesterday. The professor displayed his work on the main screen and asked students to explain why it worked. The human method eliminates 3 calculation steps, said one student with tentacles. It treats gravity as a constant force rather than a variable influence, said another. Taeho sank lower in his seat. He hadn't expected to become a teaching example. He had just solved the problem the way he knew how. After class, students surrounded him with questions. Most were technical, asking about Earth physics and how humans approached scientific problems. A few seemed annoyed that a newcomer from a primitive planet had shown them up. Did you cheat somehow? Asked a tall, thin student with scales. No one solves third-year problems that quickly. I just did the math, Taeho said. The solution was straightforward to me. By the end of the week, Taeho was exhausted from all the attention. He sat alone in the cafeteria, hoping for a quiet meal. The food from the dispenser looked strange, purple cubes that tasted like salted fish, but at least it was safe for humans to eat. May I join you? Taeho looked up to see a small female student with pale pink skin and large, dark eyes. She was about his height, which made her one of the shortest beings at the academy. Sure, he said, gesturing to the empty seat. I'm Sun, she introduced herself, sitting down with her tray of orange spheres. I'm a Mindari. We're natural telepaths, though I'm keeping my abilities shielded out of respect. Taeho nodded, remembering his briefing about telepathic species. Thanks for that. I'm Taeho, but I guess everyone knows that by now. Sun smiled. You've become quite famous. The human who solved an impossible problem with elementary methods. It wasn't impossible, Taeho protested. It was just physics. That's what makes it so interesting, Sun said, leaning forward. What seems basic to you is revolutionary to us. I'm curious about how your mind works. The way you solved that problem, it's fascinating. Taeho poked at his purple food cubes. I just applied what I learned on Earth. That's exactly it, Sun said excitedly. Your species evolved on a planet with conditions that would kill most galactic citizens. Your understanding of physical forces comes from actual physical experience. Most species here evolved in gentler environments. Our understanding is theoretical, not practical. Taeho had never thought of it that way. So you're saying because Earth is dangerous, we understand physics better? Not better, differently, Sun corrected. You understand certain forces instinctively because your survival once depended on it. Would you consider studying together? I think we could learn much from each other. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Taeho felt a glimmer of belonging. Here was someone who didn't fear him or resent him, someone who was genuinely interested in his perspective. I'd like that, he said. They agreed to meet in the library after classes the next day. As Sun left with a wave, Taeho felt his spirits lift. Maybe he wasn't just an outsider after all. Maybe being from Earth, being a Deathworlder, gave him something valuable to contribute. That evening in his room, Taeho wrote in his journal about the day's events. Maybe, he wrote, the very things that make humans different are what make us important to the galaxy. Our struggles on Earth taught us things that others never had to learn. Perhaps that's why we're here, not just to learn from them, but to teach as well. Taeho and Sun sat in a quiet corner of the academy library. The room was vast, with shelves that moved on their own to bring books to students. Data screens floated in the air, and beings of all shapes and sizes studied at strange desks designed for their unique bodies. I still don't understand how you solved that problem so easily, Sun said, looking at Taeho's notes. The standard approach requires at least 30 steps of calculation. Taeho picked up a small ball from the table. It's not just about the equations, he explained, tossing the ball gently from hand to hand. Humans evolved on a planet with unpredictable weather, shifting terrain, and dangerous predators. We had to develop an intuitive understanding of physics just to survive. He tossed the ball up and caught it. Like this, I know exactly where this ball will land without doing any math. My brain calculates it automatically because on Earth, knowing how objects move could mean life or death. Sun's large eyes widened. That's it. Your species developed practical physics before theoretical physics. You understand these principles in your body, not just your mind. She grabbed her tablet and began typing rapidly. This changes everything. Most galactic species developed in stable environments where survival didn't depend on physical awareness. Our understanding of physics is purely theoretical. Is that why you all use such complicated equations? Taeho asked. You're trying to describe something you've never felt? Exactly. Sun was excited now. It's like trying to explain color to a species with no eyes. We've been missing the physical intuition that makes these concepts real. The next day, 3 more students joined their study group. By the end of the week, they had 10 regular members, including Han, who had initially been skeptical of Taeho. I still don't fully understand your method, Han admitted, but it works. And it's faster than what we've been taught. They worked together every day after classes. Taeho explained Earth physics, while the others helped him understand the advanced concepts in their curriculum. They discovered that by combining approaches, they could solve problems neither could manage alone. Word of their success spread through the academy. Students began stopping Taeho in hallways to ask questions. Some professors even attended their study sessions, quietly observing from the back of the room. 2 weeks after their first meeting, Taeho received a message from Professor Gi requesting a meeting in the faculty office. Did I do something wrong? Taeho asked Sun. I doubt it, she reassured him. Your methods have been working perfectly. Professor Gi's office was a strange room where gravity seemed lighter and the air had a purple tint. The professor's misty form swirled around a desk that appeared to be made of light. Thank you for coming, Student Kim, Professor Gi said. Please, sit down. Taeho carefully lowered himself into a chair that adjusted to fit his human shape. Your approach to quantum positioning has created quite a stir in the faculty lounge, the professor said. We've been teaching the same methods for centuries, never questioning if there might be simpler ways to understand these concepts. The professor's form changed colors slightly, shifting through shades of purple. We've never considered teaching physics from an evolutionary adaptive perspective. The idea that your species' survival environment shaped your understanding of physical laws is revolutionary. Taeho shifted uncomfortably. I was just solving problems the way I learned on Earth. Precisely, Professor Gi said. And that's what makes it so valuable. Would you be willing to help develop a new module for the class? One that incorporates this Earth perspective you've brought us? Tae-ho couldn't believe it. You want my help? But I'm just a first-year student. I've only been here a few weeks. The professor's mist formed what might have been a smile. Sometimes the freshest perspectives come from those who haven't been taught what's impossible. Your lack of advanced training is precisely why you could see a solution we could not. I would be honored, Tae-ho said. Excellent. You may select a team to assist you. I believe Student Sun has been particularly helpful? Tae-ho nodded. Yes, and several others as well. As he left the office, Tae-ho felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. When he'd arrived at the academy, other students had feared him for being a Deathworlder. Now, that very background was what made his contribution valuable. That night, he sent a message to his parents on Earth. It turns out that growing up on a dangerous planet taught us things the rest of the galaxy never learned. They don't fear us anymore, they need us. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Tae-ho slept soundly, no longer feeling like an outsider, but like someone with something important to offer. Tae-ho stood at the front of the classroom beside Professor Gi. 3 months ago, he had been a nervous newcomer. Today, he was co-teaching one of the most popular classes at Meridian Academy. The room was packed. Students from all departments had come to hear about the new approach to physics that had caused such excitement. Even some professors stood at the back, their various appendages and sensory organs focused on the human student. The human approach isn't better or worse, Tae-ho explained, pointing to the diagram on the main screen. It's complementary. Where you excel at theoretical models, we develop intuitive shortcuts because our survival once depended on it. He demonstrated by throwing a small ball across the room. It bounced off 3 surfaces before landing perfectly in the hand of a startled student. I didn't calculate that using equations, Tae-ho said. My brain naturally understands how objects move through space because on Earth, this knowledge kept us alive. But your theoretical approaches can solve problems my intuition can't reach. Sun stood up from her seat in the front row. Together, the 2 methods are stronger than either alone, she added. By combining the Deathworlder's practical physics with our theoretical models, we've solved problems that stumped both sides. Professor Gi's misty form glowed with bright colors. This collaboration has been most enlightening, the professor said. It proves that diversity of thought is not merely beneficial but essential to scientific progress. After class, students crowded around Tae-ho with questions. He no longer felt like an outsider but like a valued member of the academy community. Later that day, Tae-ho was called to the administrative office. Professor Du was waiting for him with what appeared to be good news, judging by the bright blue color of the professor's skin. The Academy Board has reviewed your work, Professor Du said, all 4 arms moving in excitement. Your simple homework solution has blossomed into something remarkable. The professor handed Tae-ho a data tablet. On it was a paper titled Evolutionary Physics, Cross-Species Approaches to Problem Solving, with both his and Professor Gi's names listed as authors. This will be published in the Galactic Scientific Journal next month, Professor Du said. It's quite unusual for a first-year student to be published at all, let alone as co-author with a senior professor. Tae-ho stared at the screen. His name, there in the official journal that was read across thousands of worlds. He could hardly believe it. There's more, Professor Du continued. We're implementing your teaching method across departments. Biology, chemistry, even cultural studies, all can benefit from understanding how different evolutionary paths shape thinking. The professor's top set of hands made a gesture Tae-ho now recognized as pride. Additionally, 12 students have applied for the Earth Exchange program next cycle. Before you arrived, no one wanted to visit a Deathworld. 12 students want to go to Earth? Tae-ho was shocked. But they were all afraid of humans just a few months ago. You've changed that perception, Professor Du said. You've shown that being from a harsh world isn't just about physical strength, it creates unique cognitive advantages. That evening, Tae-ho met with his study group to celebrate. They had reserved a special room in the recreation area where the gravity and atmosphere could be adjusted to suit all species present. To Tae-ho, Han said, raising a cup of shimmering liquid. Who showed us that even Deathworlders have something to teach us? Everyone laughed, including Tae-ho. What had once been an insult was now a term of respect. Sun, now his closest friend, touched his arm. You've changed how we see humans, Tae-ho. Not as dangerous Deathworlders, but as beings with unique cognitive gifts. And you've all changed how I see myself, Tae-ho replied. I came here thinking I needed to hide what made me different. Now I know those differences are valuable. On his last day of the semester, Tae-ho walked through the halls of the academy. He remembered his first day, how students had moved away from him in fear. Now they nodded in greeting or stopped to ask questions. Where he had once seen fear or disdain in alien eyes, he now saw curiosity and respect. In his room that night, Tae-ho packed for his brief trip home during the break. He would return for the new term, this time as a teaching assistant in Professor Gi's class. His simple homework solution had opened a door between worlds, proving that sometimes the most ordinary human perspective could be extraordinary in the right context. As he put the small stone his grandfather had given him back in his bag, Tae-ho smiled. He had come to Meridian Academy hoping to learn from advanced alien species. He never expected that they would end up learning from him too.